The desert morning was calm the day Caleb Hartley found the little Apache girl, though he did not know yet how that moment would stay with him for the rest of his life. He had been riding since sunrise, checking the far edges of the open land near his family's old line cabin. The air felt cool for the desert, the kind of quiet that makes a cowboy believe the world is at peace. Caleb enjoyed mornings like this. They made him feel steady, as if the world was simple, and all he needed to do was follow the trail, water his horse, and listen to the wind across the sand. He was only 16 then, but he already carried himself like someone older. Life on a ranch teaches a boy responsibility early. By that age, he could rope cattle, break a horse, fix a fence, and tell the time by the way the sun sat in the sky. He liked the silence of the open land because it never asked anything from him. It was only when he found the girl that silence became something different, something filled with questions, something that changed the direction of his life without asking his permission. Caleb first saw her near a cluster of sage bushes, standing so still that she almost blended into the land. At first, he thought she might be a small deer, or maybe someone's lost pony, but as he rode closer, he realized it was a child. She looked no older than 7 or 8. Her small frame was stiff, and she kept her hands near her chest as if unsure how to protect herself. Her dark hair hung down her back in loose strands, and her eyes, large, deep, and watchful, were the first thing that caught his attention. They were filled with fear, but also something stronger: determination. He slowed his horse, not wanting to startle her. The girl took a step back, then another. She looked ready to run, but her legs trembled like she had been walking a long time. Caleb raised one hand gently. "It's all right," he said in a soft voice, the same voice he used with skittish colts. "I'm not here to trouble you." The girl stared at him but didn't speak. He didn't know her language, and she didn't know his, yet he felt she understood the tone of his voice. His horse snorted, and she flinched. Caleb quickly slid off the saddle to appear less threatening. He remembered something his father had taught him. When someone is scared, do not rush. Let them decide what feels safe. Caleb took a slow step toward her. She didn't run this time, but she did look around nervously, as if expecting someone, anyone, to appear. He wondered where her family was. Children did not wander the desert alone unless something unexpected happened. The thought made his heart tighten, though he didn't let the worry show on his face. He opened one of his saddlebags and pulled out a piece of sweetbread he had packed earlier. He held it out to her, his hand steady. She kept her eyes locked on him for several seconds before looking at the bread. Her small stomach made a quiet sound, and Caleb realized she had not eaten in a while. Very slowly, she stepped forward. Her steps were tiny, like she was testing the ground with each move. When she was close enough, she reached out with delicate fingers and took the bread from his hand. She didn't bite into it immediately. Instead, she looked at it, then at him, as if trying to understand what this meant. "Go on," Caleb encouraged softly. Only then did she take a small bite. Her eyes softened slightly, and he saw relief there. A child who feels safe enough to eat is a child who believes she is not in danger. Caleb knew he couldn't leave her there. The desert was wide and hard to survive in alone. He also knew he needed to find someone who could speak to her, someone from her own people. But she was tired, so he didn't ask her to walk far. Instead, he led his horse closer and motioned to lift her up. The girl looked at the horse with confusion. She reached out, touching its mane lightly, and the horse lowered its head as if understanding her fear. Caleb smiled. Animals were kinder than most people gave them credit for. "It's all right," he repeated. After a moment of hesitation, the girl let him lift her. She weighed almost nothing. He placed her gently up on the saddle and made sure she was sitting securely before climbing up behind her. She sat stiffly at first, but when the horse began moving at a gentle pace, She relaxed just enough to keep her balance. Caleb spoke softly as they rode. He didn't expect her to understand his words, but he hoped the calm tone might ease her nerves. He told her his name, that his horse's name was Jasper, that the land they were passing belonged to no one and everyone at the same time. He said things he might never have said to another person, simply because silence felt too heavy otherwise. The girl listened without looking back at him. Her eyes searched the horizon, as if hoping to spot someone familiar. Caleb wished he could tell her that everything would be all right. But he didn't know what she had gone through or how long she had been alone. He only knew he would do everything he could to help her. After about an hour, they reached his family's small homestead cabin near the creek. It wasn't much, a single wooden room with a simple porch and a water pump, but it was safe. Caleb helped her down from the horse, and she stood close to him, unsure if she should walk into the cabin. He didn't want to frighten her, so he brought out a blanket and let her sit on the porch while he fetched water. When he offered her the cup, she took it carefully, drinking slowly. Her eyes never left him. He sensed she was trying to figure out whether he was trustworthy. He hoped she found something good in him. He wished his mother or father were there to help, but they were days away helping a neighbor. That left him alone to figure out what to do next. He remembered stories from old ranch hands who said the Apache people respected honesty and patience. Caleb figured those were things he could offer. He pointed to himself and said, "Caleb." Then he pointed to her, hoping she would tell him her name. She hesitated, then touched her chest lightly and said a soft word. "Nayeli." Caleb repeated it gently, making sure he did not say it wrong. Her face brightened slightly at the sound of her own name. That small expression made Caleb feel something he could not put into words, a mix of relief, pride, and an unexpected protectiveness he had never felt before. As the sun lowered, she grew sleepy. Caleb guided her inside the cabin and let her rest on his mother's old cot. She curled up like a small bird, seeking shelter. Before she drifted to sleep, she reached out and lightly tugged the edge of his shirt, as if asking him not to leave her alone. He stayed sitting on a nearby chair until her breathing became soft and steady. Only then did he step outside to think. The desert sky was turning shades of gold and soft blue. Caleb looked out at the empty horizon and wondered where her family was and whether they were safe. He knew he had to search for someone who could help her, someone who knew her language. But he also knew he would not let anything happen to her while she was under his care. Right there, under the wide western sky, Caleb made a quiet promise. He promised that as long as Nayeli was with him, she would never feel alone or unprotected. He didn't know how deeply that promise would root itself in her heart, or in his. He didn't know that this simple act of kindness would shape the next 20 years of both their lives. All he knew was that on that calm desert morning, he had found a child in need. And without knowing it, he had also found a bond that would follow him like a shadow long after she returned to her people. 20 years passed before Nayeli returned to the world where she had once been a lost child. Time had shaped her into a confident young woman, graceful in every move and calm in every decision. She had grown up surrounded by people who cared for her, people who taught her language, culture, and strength. Yet deep in her heart, one memory stayed brighter than all others, the memory of a cowboy who had shown her kindness when she had nothing else in the world. A cowboy named Caleb Hartley. Nayeli often thought about that moment when she was a frightened girl, and he had reached out to her with gentle eyes and steady hands. He had helped her when she had no words, no strength, and no direction. Even as she grew older, she carried that memory like a small light inside her. It guided her decisions, shaped her understanding of kindness, and reminded her that compassion can come from unexpected places. As she matured, her elders noticed her curiosity about the world beyond her community. She asked questions about different towns, languages, and people. She became skilled at speaking not only her own language but English as well. Her teachers encouraged her to learn more, and soon she was chosen to help communicate with nearby settlements. Through those journeys, she learned how big the world was and how small the distance felt between her and the memory of Caleb. She remembered the bracelet he had tied around her wrist on the day he found her. It had been a simple piece of leather, but she kept it all these years. When she touched it, she felt the same sense of comfort she felt as a child on his horse. She didn't know if she would ever see him again, but she knew she had to try. Something in her spirit whispered that meeting him again was part of her path. So one gentle morning, after speaking to her elders and receiving their blessing, she set out on a journey. Her horse, a calm brown mare with a steady pace, carried her through open fields, across shallow streams and past cool evening winds. Nayeli traveled with purpose, but also with patience. She had grown wise enough to understand that important things cannot be rushed. The journey took several days. She met traders along the way who spoke of ranches, small towns, and people who lived quiet lives raising cattle. When she asked if they had heard of a man named Caleb Hartley, some nodded, some shrugged, and some said they had heard the name long ago. She gathered every small piece of information, stitching them together like a map in her mind. By the time she reached the valley that led to Willow Crossing, she felt a mixture of excitement and calm determination. The town came into view like a soft dream, a place where dusty roads curved around wooden buildings, where horses stood tied outside shops, where people moved with a slow but steady rhythm. Willow Crossing wasn't large, but it had its own warmth. Smoke curled from chimneys, music drifted out of the saloon, and conversations floated through the air. As she rode in, people paused to look at her. She carried herself with quiet confidence, sitting tall in the saddle with her long, dark hair braided neatly. Her clothes were simple but well-made, and the leather bracelet on her wrist stood out against her skin. She did not look lost. She looked like someone who had come with purpose. Some town folks whispered, not unkindly but curiously. Travelers were common, but a young woman alone, with such strong presence, was something they rarely saw. Nayeli paid them no mind. She had learned long ago that attention is nothing to fear when your heart knows its direction. She stopped her horse near the general store and slid down with grace. A kind-looking older woman at the store's entrance greeted her. "Afternoon, dear. You passing through or looking for someone?" Nayeli smiled politely. "I am looking for a man named Caleb Hartley." The woman raised her eyebrows. "Caleb? Oh yes, folks know him around here, quiet fellow. Lives out toward the North Ridge now. Rancher. He doesn't come to town much, but when he does, it's usually near evening." Nayeli thanked her, her heart quickening with each word. Caleb was here. He was real. She had found the place where his steps touched the earth. She decided to wait in town rather than ride to his ranch. She wanted their first meeting in 20 years to be calm, not rushed. So she took a slow walk through Willow Crossing, letting her eyes absorb every detail. The town felt peaceful. Children chased each other near the bakery. Older men sat on rocking chairs outside the barber shop. Women with baskets chatted warmly with one another. Though it was different from her own community, she felt no discomfort, only curiosity and gratitude for the simplicity of the place. Several hours passed, and soft evening light began to settle across the town. That was when she saw him. Caleb Hartley rode in on a tall chestnut horse, his posture still straight, but carrying the weight of years. He looked older, of course. 20 years will do that. But his eyes were the same calm blue she remembered. Even from a distance, she recognized the familiar steadiness in him. Her breath caught quietly in her chest. He tied his horse outside the saloon and stepped onto the wooden walkway. His hat shaded his face, but when he lifted his head, Nayeli felt the memories rush back with surprising force. She had imagined this moment many times, but the real thing made her heart ache with gratitude. She approached him slowly. Each step felt filled with the weight of 20 years and the lightness of a promise she had kept inside her spirit. Caleb noticed her when she was just a few steps away. His eyes narrowed slightly in confusion. He saw someone familiar, but could not place her. She spoke softly, her voice steady. Caleb Hartley. He blinked, surprised a stranger knew his name. "Yes, ma'am," he answered politely. "Can I help you?" For a moment, she simply looked at him, letting the memory of her childhood settle inside her. She lifted her wrist and showed him the leather bracelet he had once tied. His eyes widened, and in that instant, she saw understanding wash over him. "I came to find you," she said gently. "It has been a long time." Caleb stared at the bracelet, then at her face. His breath caught. The little girl he had rescued, frightened, silent, clutching his shirt, was now a grown woman standing before him with strength in her eyes. "Nayeli?" He said her name softly, almost unsure if it was possible. Her smile was small but warm. "Yes, I have come back after many years." For a long moment they simply stood there, letting the past connect to the present. The town around them seemed quiet, as if even the evening wind paused to witness their reunion. Caleb's voice shook slightly when he finally spoke. I never thought I would see you again." Nayeli's eyes softened. "I told myself I would find you someday. And today, I did." Caleb looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not the lost child from long ago, but a woman who had crossed miles and years with grace and purpose. It humbled him deeply. "Why did you come?" he asked, not out of doubt, but out of genuine wonder. Her answer was simple, spoken with honesty that carried no hesitation. "To thank you," she said softly, "and because meeting you again is something my heart has carried for many years." The moment settled between them like soft evening dust, gentle, warm, and full of possibility. And though neither of them knew it yet, this was only the beginning of the new path their lives were about to share. Caleb stood in front of the saloon, unable to move at first. Seeing Nayeli again after 20 years felt like trying to understand a dream while still half awake. He had lived a quiet life, a calm life, one day blending into the next. Nothing surprising ever happened to him. Yet here she was, the little girl he once carried on his horse, now a grown woman who looked at him with a warmth that felt both new and familiar. For a few long seconds, he simply stared at her, trying to connect the memory of the small, frightened child with the confident woman standing before him. Her eyes were the same, though, those deep, thoughtful eyes he had never forgotten. Even as a child, her eyes had spoken more than words ever could. Nayeli seemed just as steady. She stood quietly, allowing him time to gather his thoughts. She didn't rush or push. She simply waited, as if she understood that this moment meant as much to him as it did to her. Caleb finally took a breath and said softly, "You grew up." She gave a gentle smile. "Everyone grows, Caleb. Even the cowboy who helped me." He almost laughed at her calm tone, but his heart was too full of questions. "How did you find me? It's been so long. I never expected—" She lifted her wrist again, showing him the old leather bracelet. "I kept this. It reminded me of kindness. I followed stories and names until they led me here." Her words felt like sunlight breaking through a cloud. It touched him more deeply than he wanted to admit. He had often wondered what became of her. He hoped she had grown up safe, happy, surrounded by love, and now she stood before him as proof that she had not only survived, she had flourished. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "You do not have to say anything yet," she replied gently. A couple of townsfolk walked by, glancing curiously at them. Caleb realized they were standing in the middle of the walkway. With a polite gesture, he motioned her toward a quieter corner near the horse trough. "Would you like to sit for a bit?" he asked. "Yes," she said softly. They found a wooden bench outside the old trading post. The sky was slowly turning golden as the sun lowered behind the hills. The warm light made everything feel calm, even the anxious flutter in Caleb's chest. Nayeli sat with perfect posture, her hands folded lightly on her lap. Caleb sat beside her, leaving a respectful amount of space. For a moment, neither spoke. Caleb was thinking, and Nayeli seemed to understand that he needed time. Finally, he asked, "How much do you remember from that day?" Her eyes softened. "I remember more than you think. I remember the sound of your horse. I remember your calm voice. I remember that you gave me food even when you did not know who I was." Caleb looked down at his hands. "You were so small. I didn't know what to do. I just wanted you to feel safe." "You did," she said simply. "You helped me when I had nothing." He felt a warmth spread across his chest. He had never been praised much in his life. He had helped her because it felt like the right thing to do, not because he expected gratitude. Yet hearing her appreciation now touched him deeply. She studied his face for a moment, noticing the lines around his eyes and the touch of gray at his temples. "You look strong, Caleb. Life has been busy for you?" He shrugged. "Busy enough. I run a ranch now, mostly cattle. Nothing too big." "You live alone?" she asked. He nodded. "It just turned out that way. Never found a reason to change it." He immediately regretted saying that when he saw a flicker in her expression, not sadness, but something thoughtful. She looked away from him toward the sky, then back at him with calm certainty. "I came here for a reason," she said quietly. Caleb felt his heartbeat pick up. He wasn't sure why he felt so nervous. "What reason?" Then she said the words that would stay with him forever. "I came to marry you." Caleb blinked, certain he must have misheard. "To marry me?" "Yes." Her tone was gentle, not rushed or dramatic. She said it like someone stating something true and natural, like telling him the sky was blue or the river flowed north. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. No woman had ever spoken to him so directly. For a moment, he wondered if she was joking. But her calm, sincere expression told him she was serious. "Nayeli," he said slowly, "you don't owe me anything. You don't have to—" She shook her head. "This is not about owing. This is about choosing. I grew up knowing that someone in this world showed me kindness without asking anything in return. I always felt I would meet you again, and I always felt my future would be connected to yours." He swallowed hard. "You were a child. Things feel different when you're grown." "That is true," she said softly, "which is why I waited until now. I wanted to meet you again as the woman I became, not the child you once helped." He looked into her eyes and saw no hesitation, no confusion, only sincerity. But Caleb felt overwhelmed. He had lived quietly for so many years, keeping his heart guarded because life had taught him loss early. He wasn't used to someone choosing him. He wasn't used to being wanted in any special way. "Nayeli, I don't think I'm the man you imagine," he said quietly. "What man do you believe I imagine?" she asked gently. He exhaled. "Someone better. Someone stronger. Someone who deserves something as big as what you're offering." She shook her head with a warm calmness. "You are exactly the man I remember. You are steady, gentle, honest. Those things do not fade with time. I did not come to you because you are perfect. I came because your heart is good." Her words touched him more deeply than he expected. He looked away, trying to gather himself. "I'm just a ranchman," he murmured, And I am just a woman who crossed many miles to find the one person who once made the world feel safe, she answered softly. There was silence again. But this time it was warm, not heavy. Caleb felt something shift inside him, something he had kept locked away for years. He finally said, I don't know if I'm ready for something like marriage. Nayeli nodded. I did not come to force you. I came to tell you my heart. What happens next, we can decide together. He felt a slow breath leave his chest. Her patience eased him. Her calmness allowed him to breathe again. Maybe, he said slowly, we could start with talking, getting to know each other again. Her smile was gentle and genuine. I would like that very much. Caleb realized he wanted that too. He wanted to learn who she had become. He wanted to understand why she had traveled so far for him. And part of him, a part he tried not to think about, wanted to see where this new path might lead. As the sun fully dipped behind the hills, casting warm shadows across the quiet town, Caleb and Nayeli walked together toward his horse, speaking softly, learning each other's voices again. It was not the end of their story. It was the true beginning. The next morning, after their quiet walk through Willow Crossing, Caleb woke earlier than usual. He didn't know if it was the soft light creeping through his window or the fact that Nayeli was somewhere in town. But something inside him felt different, lighter, almost hopeful. He washed his face, fed his horse, and tried to pretend that everything was normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. It was as if life had shifted the moment she said she had come to marry him. Her words still echoed in his mind, stirring feelings he had not experienced in years. He rode slowly into town, wondering if she might still be there, wondering if she still felt the same after a night of rest and quiet thinking. Caleb had spent most of his life alone by choice. He liked the peace of his ranch, the rhythm of caring for his animals, the quiet evenings where the only sound was the wind. But now, something inside him whispered that peace did not always mean being alone, that calm could also come from someone standing beside you. When he reached Willow Crossing, he found Nayeli sitting near the small garden behind the hotel, watching the flowers sway gently with the breeze. She looked peaceful, her hands resting lightly in her lap, her braid falling over her shoulder. When she heard his footsteps, she turned with a soft smile as if she had been expecting him. "Good morning, Caleb," she said. Her voice had a calm warmth that made him feel welcome without a single extra word. "Morning," he replied, trying to hide how nervous he felt. "Did you sleep all right?" "Yes," she answered. "I felt calm. Yesterday was important and my heart needed rest." He nodded, unsure how to respond. He sat beside her on the edge of the wooden fence, leaving enough space to show respect, but not so much that it felt distant. Birds chirped above them, and a soft breeze lifted the leaves on the trees. After a moment, she spoke gently. "I know yesterday may have surprised you. I said something very big." Caleb almost laughed at the understatement. "Yes, ma'am, it was, a lot." Nayeli smiled softly. "I meant what I said, but I also know a heart needs time to understand big things." He looked at her with quiet appreciation. "Thank you." "I needed that time," she nodded. "Then we can talk. You can ask me anything you want." Caleb took a slow breath. There were many things he wanted to know. He wanted to understand her life, her journey, and why she felt such certainty about him. But he started with something simple. "What made you remember me all these years?" She looked down at her hands for a moment. "I did not remember everything clearly at first. I was young, but I remembered how safe I felt with you. Many things in life fade when you grow, but feeling safe, that stays. You were the first person who showed me comfort when I had none." He listened quietly, touched by the honesty in her voice. "As I grew," she continued, I heard stories from my elders about kindness, about how one act of goodness can stay in the spirit for a lifetime. They taught me to follow the things that bring peace to the heart. Every time I thought of you, my heart felt steady. So you came looking for me? He asked softly. Yes, she said without hesitation. Not because I felt I had to, but because I wanted to understand the bond I carried inside me. Caleb nodded slowly. I think I understand. She turned her head slightly. And what has your heart carried all these years, Caleb? He hesitated. He wasn't used to sharing his feelings, but with her it felt all right. Natural, even. I carried the memory of a little girl who trusted me, he said. I never forgot your eyes. You were scared, but you let me help you. That kind of trust stays with a man. Nayeli smiled gently. Then maybe we both carried something. Maybe so, he agreed. They sat together for a while in peaceful silence. The town was coming to life around them, but in that small garden, time moved slower and more softly. After a moment, Nayeli spoke again. My elders knew about my journey. They blessed it. They believed it was part of my path to find the person who shaped my spirit when it was young. What did they say about me? Caleb asked. Curious but unsure, he wanted to hear the answer. They said you were someone with a good heart, she replied. Someone honest. Someone whose spirit connected with mine for a reason. Caleb let her words settle inside him. No one had ever spoken of him that way before. He had always thought of himself as simple, just a rancher who tried to live right. Hearing that someone believed his kindness had touched another person's life in a lasting way made him feel humbled. He asked quietly, What did you hope would happen when you found me? Nayeli took a slow breath. I hoped you would remember me. I hoped you would let me speak my heart. I hoped you would not turn me away. Beyond that, I left everything to the spirit of the moment. Her honesty felt natural and graceful, like she wasn't trying to push fate, but simply following it. Caleb felt something shift inside him again, something gentle and warm. He realized he no longer felt fear at her presence. He felt gratitude, and something else he couldn't quite name. He stood slowly and extended his hand. Come with me. There's something I want to show you. She placed her hand in his, trusting and steady. He led her to his horse and helped her mount. Then he climbed on behind her. The warmth of her presence felt calming, not overwhelming like he expected. They rode toward the canyon where he had found her 20 years earlier. The land around them stretched wide, filled with soft hills, scattered wildflowers, and a sky so blue it felt endless. As they reached the canyon's edge, Nayeli grew quiet. She looked around slowly, recognizing the land even though she had been so young then. This place, she whispered softly. I feel the memory here. Caleb nodded. This is where I found you, right near that sage bush. Nayeli stepped down and walked across the earth gently, as if her footsteps were respecting the memory of her younger self. Caleb watched her, feeling something tender in his chest. She looked at him with quiet eyes. You carried me from here to safety. You helped me begin again. Now I am here to understand everything fully. Caleb stepped beside her. I didn't know if I did enough. Sometimes I wondered if you were okay, if you ever got over the fear. She looked at him with warmth. You did more than enough. You helped me feel safe, and that memory guided me through many things. He swallowed hard. I'm glad. Nayeli took a steady breath. Caleb, this place is part of our story, but I do not want our story to stay in the past. I want to build something new, but only if your heart feels the same. He looked at her, truly seeing her, not as a child he once helped, but as a grown woman standing before him with courage, gentleness, and honesty. He felt peace settle in his chest. Not excitement, not fear, just a warm, steady peace. "I want to see where this can go," he said softly. "I want to understand you. I want to take this one step at a time." Nayeli smiled, a soft joy blooming in her expression. "That is all I hoped for." As the warm light of afternoon touched the canyon, they stood side by side, their shadows falling gently across the land where their connection began. Their hearts were no longer tied only to the past. They were beginning something new together. The days that followed their visit to the canyon were quiet, steady, and filled with soft understanding. Caleb and Nayeli spent time together without rushing anything. They talked. They walked the open fields. They watched the sky stretch across the land like a calm blanket. Each day felt like a bridge connecting who they were 20 years ago to the people they had become now. Caleb found himself waking earlier, not out of habit, but because he wanted to see her. He felt a new kind of warmth in his chest, something gentle that he had not felt in many years. She brought a peaceful feeling into his life, like a calm breeze on a warm afternoon. He didn't feel pressured by her presence. Instead, he felt understood, respected, and valued. Nayeli, too, felt something change within her. She had always carried the memory of a kind young cowboy who once helped her. But now, seeing the man he had grown into, she felt that her heart had found its place. Caleb was steady, thoughtful, and honest. He did not speak more than he needed to, yet every word he said felt sincere. She felt comfortable around him, and that comfort grew each day. One morning, Caleb invited her to ride with him to his ranch. She agreed with a smile, and together they traveled across wide fields where the grass moved like soft waves. His ranch was simple, with a warm charm that reflected the man himself. There were wooden fences, a barn with a weathered roof, a horse corral, and a porch that looked out over miles of open land. "It's peaceful here," Nayeli said as she walked slowly across the yard. "It keeps me grounded," Caleb replied. "It's not much, but it's home." She touched the wooden fence, feeling the calm energy of the place. A home is not measured by size, it is measured by how it feels. He looked at her, appreciating how easily she spoke truth. "I'm glad you like it." They spent the afternoon feeding his horses, brushing them, and talking as they worked side by side. Nayeli moved with grace, showing respect to the animals, and Caleb admired the gentle way she handled them. She seemed to understand living creatures deeply. Even his usually shy mare walked toward her without hesitation. "She likes you," Caleb said with a surprised smile. Nayeli laughed softly. "Animals feel a person's spirit. If your spirit is calm, they trust you." He nodded. "That's true." They took a break under the shade of an old cottonwood tree. The air was warm but soothing, and the breeze carried the scent of earth and grass. Caleb handed her a cup of cool water, and she thanked him with a soft smile. There was a quietness between them, but it was a gentle kind of quiet that needed no words. After a moment, she looked at him thoughtfully. "Caleb, have you always lived alone here?" "Yes," he said. "I guess I never felt ready for anything different." "Do you still feel that way?" she asked, her voice soft and sincere. He looked down at his hands. "Not anymore." Her eyes warmed. "I am glad," he continued, speaking honestly. "When you came back, it made me think. It made me see that my life doesn't have to stay the same. You bring peace with you, and I didn't expect that." Nayeli placed her hand lightly over her heart. "You bring peace to me, too." Caleb looked at her with a gentle expression. "I want to take things slow, but I also want you to know that I feel something strong for you. Something real." She nodded, her eyes bright with calm emotion. "That is enough for me. I do not ask for speed. I only ask for honesty. And you have given me that. Their connection felt like the soft forming of a bond that had been waiting to bloom for years. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't uncertain. It was natural, like water finding its path through a stream. In the days that followed, they built a small routine. Sometimes they rode together. Sometimes they talked for hours. And sometimes they sat quietly, simply enjoying each other's presence. Caleb felt himself opening up more each day, sharing pieces of his past he had never told anyone. Nayeli listened with patience, her eyes warm and steady. In return, she shared her own stories, how she grew up, how she learned, how she searched for him, guided by a feeling she could not ignore. One evening, the sky turned golden, and the air felt soft. Caleb and Nayeli stood on the ridge overlooking the valley, watching the sun settle gently behind the hills. The colors spread across the sky like a warm painting, filling the world with peaceful light. Nayeli looked at the horizon and said quietly, "I always believed we would meet again. Even when I had no proof, my heart told me our paths would join." Caleb felt something rise in his chest, something tender and steady. "I'm glad your heart told you that. Otherwise, I might have lived the rest of my life not knowing you again." She turned toward him, her expression full of warmth. "Do you feel ready to make a choice, Caleb?" He looked into her deep, calm eyes. "Yes," he said softly. "I know what my heart wants now." He took her hands gently into his own. His voice shook a little, not from fear but from emotion. "If your heart still says the same, if you still want to join your life with mine, then I'd be honored to marry you." Her smile lit up her whole face, soft and bright, like the morning sun. "Yes," she said in a warm whisper. "My heart still says the same." They stood there for a long moment, hands together, letting the gentle glow of the setting sun wrap around them. It felt like the land itself was blessing their decision. Over the next few days, preparations for a simple, beautiful ceremony began. They kept it small, just a few townsfolk who knew Caleb and a few of Nayeli's people who traveled to share the special moment. The two communities met with respect and understanding, celebrating the union of two hearts that had found each other across years, miles, and memories. The ceremony was held in the open field near Caleb's ranch, where wildflowers grew and the sky stretched wide and warm. Nayeli wore a soft, flowing dress with delicate beads added by her own people. Caleb wore clean, simple clothing that reflected his humble nature. They stood facing each other, surrounded by gentle smiles and kind blessings. Nayeli's elders spoke soft words of wisdom about connection, trust, and the paths that bring two souls together. Caleb's neighbors added words of support and happiness for him. There was no grand spectacle, only sincerity, warmth, and the quiet promise of a shared future. When they exchanged simple rings made from polished silver, their eyes met with a deep understanding. Their hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the gentle strength of the moment. Caleb said softly, "I promise to walk beside you with honesty and peace." Nayeli replied, "And I promise to stand with you with trust and kindness." Their vows settled into the air like soft music, and everyone around them felt the warmth of their bond. When the ceremony ended, they walked hand in hand through the field, feeling the soft earth beneath their feet and the gentle breeze around them. It was as if the world had opened its arms to welcome their new beginning. That night, as the stars filled the sky and the land grew quiet, Caleb and Nayeli sat on the porch of their new shared home. They didn't need many words. They simply rested beside each other, watching the moon rise slowly above the hills. After a long moment of peaceful silence, Nayeli spoke softly. "Caleb, do you know what I feel right now?" He smiled. "Tell me." She leaned her head gently on his shoulder. "I feel at home. Caleb placed his hand over hers, his heart full and steady. "Me too," he said. And in that simple, calm moment, they began the life that had been waiting for them for 20 years. A life built on kindness, trust, and the quiet strength of two hearts that were always meant to find each other again.